Most modern movie thrillers start with someone hacking into a computer system of something big. Maybe it's a dam wall, or it's a public transport system, or whatever it might be. And you know that disaster is looming, and it's going to take, I don't know, Tom Cruise or somebody to come and fix it. Well, turned into reality over the weekend as the U.S. government issued emergency legislation following the largest fuel pipeline in the U.S. being hit by a ransomware cyber attack. How does a fuel pipeline get hit by a ransomware cyber attack? Well, the Colonial Pipeline carries 2.5 million barrels of fuel a day. That's 45% of the East Coast supply of diesel, petrol, jet fuel. It's a very significant target. And of course, everything nowadays of any importance is run by computers. Computers are connected to the internet. The internet enables you to get access if you're a smart hacker. Brian Pinnock is cybersecurity specialist at Mimecast. Welcome to the Money Show this evening, Brian. Just give me a sense of it, please, on the sorts of hacks that you see happening on a regular basis, and hacks of this size and scale with this potential for disruption.
Good evening, Bruce. So yes, these kinds of attacks are happening all the time. And unfortunately, this kind of thing is just hitting the media because they happen to have hit a company which is now going to have a massive impact on the U.S. economy. And so, of course, it makes headlines. But the headlines really just show the tip of the iceberg. At Mimecast, we did a State of Email Security report that found that nearly half of South African organizations have actually experienced business disruption from this kind of ransomware in the last 12 months.
And the motives behind this, I mean, we hear all kinds of theories all the time, but I mean, sometimes it's for a bit of fun, somebody in their underpants in a basement somewhere. Sometimes it's to deliberately disrupt a city, an economy, a service, whatever the reason might be.
Yes, there are a number of types of what we call threat actors, because we like using big words in cybersecurity, but essentially they're just various types of hackers. So, yes, you absolutely do get your hooded hacker in his mom's basement. Those sorts of people do definitely exist, but they really are a very, very small minority of the types of attackers. You typically find there's sort of three groups: nation-state or nation-state-sponsored attackers are the big ones, cyber criminals who are now actually sort of ecosystems in themselves, and this is actually what we're seeing here, and then organizations that are more interested in political gain and sort of creating some sort of a message. So this one, we're not too sure yet because it's still early days, but it does actually seem to be a cyber criminal gang who may actually not even have targeted this particular organization. These types of gangs work on what's called an affiliate system. So they create ransomware as a service, very much like you buy all of your as-a-service type cloud services from various large cloud providers. You can do that on the dark web with these cyber criminals. And so what's probably happened is somebody's targeted this large oil pipeline outside of this organization, and the cyber criminals' tools are actually just being used by one of their affiliates.
It's the most astonishing process, isn't it? I mean, understanding the mind of the cyber criminal. And the wonderful thing, I mean, the internet has freed us up, and the internet has given us great, personal freedoms that we never appreciated before. But with those personal freedoms come access to us in the same way as leaving your ground floor bedroom window open with the electric fence switched off and a sign saying, "Hey, burglars, this way."
Yes, pretty much. Unfortunately, what's happening is it's a little bit of a cyber arms race. So if you just look at ransomware itself, there's many forms of cyber attacks. So ransomware kind of started out as a very simple thing where essentially what the hackers did is they slipped past your defenses and they then scrambled the victims, whoever you might be, your files, and that kind of rendered your computer systems unusable. And then what they did is they demanded ransom. So people then started getting clever and saying, well, we'll just actually do backups and we won't pay the ransom. So what's happened now, it's evolved into what's called double extortion, is before they scramble all your files, what they do is they exfiltrate, and a big word we like to use, but it basically means take a whole bunch of data out of your systems. And then what we do if we're an attacker is we then extort you. So that could be, intellectual property, your client list, contracts, the kinds of things you really don't want to be out there in the public domain. And then they use that as a form of insurance. And unfortunately, that's the sort of the cyber criminal side of insurance. What's happening due to cyber insurance coming through is we're seeing more and more cyber insurance covering the ransom payment part of things. So cyber criminals are aware that they're more likely to get paid because people are actually insuring for these forms of ransom.
And so when we look at the level of protection that exists, I mean, I suppose you described it as an arms race earlier. There's an arms race between people like yourselves who develop the sort of software to protect us from the bad guys, and the bad guys constantly looking to get ahead of you. And it's almost like this sort of two-horse race of some days you're ahead and some days they're ahead, clearly.
I think that's absolutely it. What's happening is there are vulnerabilities that are discovered all the time, every day. So there's no computer system which is completely secure. We obviously do the best that we can. We have multiple layers of technology to try and protect the organizations. But really what we're seeing is that, as I said, half of South African organizations have experienced this form of disruption. A lot of the reason for that is there's one kind of vulnerability we really battle to defend against, and that's human error. It's very hard to patch human beings. One of the ways you can do that is actually by putting people on cyber training and all sorts of things. But unfortunately, what we're finding is organizations are actually not doing nearly enough of that. So yes, there's obviously computer systems and cybersecurity systems, but there's also what we call the human firewall. And you have to keep the human firewall current and train them. And that's something that's not happening nearly enough.
Are we still finding good old-fashioned use of, emails, phishing emails being sent and people clicking on them? And I mean, that is like leaving the keys in the front door, isn't it?
That is still, by and large, the primary way that hackers get into organizations. If you were going to design a system to get inside your company from scratch, you'd probably design a system that looks a lot like email, just because of the fact that it's one of the major business tools that we use, and organizations can't turn off their email. People have been talking about the death of email for 10 years, and it still hasn't happened, and email has just grown and grown. So yes, phishing attacks of various kinds absolutely do happen, and it's necessary to have tools like the ones we provide to actually protect your organization. But at the same time, the cyber criminals are constantly evolving, and we're having to keep up with the cyber criminals, and that's the challenge.
Have companies become more vulnerable in lockdowns, in COVID, than ever before, considering they've had to open up their systems to allow everybody who works for them to work from home? Has that made everybody more vulnerable?
It has indeed. So what we've actually found, some of the research that we found, is people were more likely to do all of the things that they're not supposed to do, click on links. What the attackers were doing is they adapted really, really quickly, putting all kinds of schemes in place, fraudulent schemes, pretending to be information about the virus, pretending to be sites that would give you access to various medications, and now sort of sites that give you access to vaccines. So the cyber criminals move really, really quickly, and so that side of things is definitely true. And in fact, this particular attack appears to be, and this is really, as I say, it's still early days, we're not sure, this appears to not have actually been an email-originated attack, but seems to have come in from the fact that engineers were remotely accessing control systems from home. And what's possible that's happened is these threat actors have actually bought account login details for the various remote desktop software that this company's been using and have managed to access their systems from there.
Astonishing. Thank you, Brian. Brian Pinnock, cybersecurity specialist at Mimecast, every day looking for sort of the bad guys coming knocking on your door and constantly finding new ways to keep them away. In a moment, Ian Mann from Gateways Business Consultants. He is our regular book reviewer. He is going to be reviewing for us a book by Adam Grant. Adam Grant is a psychologist in the United States. This book is called Think Again, with Ian Mann in a moment.